The room went completely silent. Not awkward silence, not polite silence, the kind of silence where you can hear the air conditioning hum and suddenly become aware of your own heartbeat in your ears. My coworker was still smiling at me, still pretending, still waiting for me to laugh it off, like I always had. But this time, I didn't. And the person sitting at the head of the table, the one she'd been desperate to impress for weeks, was watching everything. If you've ever been disrespected at work in a way that was just subtle enough for people to deny it, if you've ever felt someone trying to erase you quietly, politely, with a smile, then stay with me, because this is the moment where I finally stopped shrinking and let her expose herself. Before we dive in, if you've ever fantasized about calmly, professionally, devastatingly putting someone in their place without yelling, swearing, or risking your job, hit that like button, subscribe, and settle in. This isn't a screaming match revenge story. This is a pressure point story, the kind that hits slow and lingers. Let's begin. There's something uniquely suffocating about working in a small office. Not small in headcount, small in visibility. The kind of place where nothing truly disappears, where conversations echo even after doors close, where you learn very quickly that privacy isn't real. It's just something everyone pretends exists so the day can move forward. In offices like that, reputations don't form loudly. They accumulate quietly. Everyone knows who shows up early and who always leaves just on time, who volunteers for extra work and who pretends to be overwhelmed, who cries in the bathroom but claims allergies, who's suddenly very friendly with management. And everyone watches. I'd been there long enough to understand the rules. Don't overshare, don't react too fast, don't be the person who makes things awkward. So I kept my head down. I was 32, not new, not senior leadership, the reliable middle, the person you trust to get things done without drama. And then there was Kara. Kara entered every room like she was already being applauded. Late 20s, perfect hair, nails always done but never flashy. She dressed like she'd studied what approachable professionalism looked like on Pinterest. Her voice was bright. Upward inflections, laughing just a second longer than necessary. She was friendly in a way that demanded reciprocation. If she complimented your shoes, you felt obligated to smile back. If she asked about your weekend, you felt rude not answering. But underneath it all, there was something sharp, something calculating. The first time she forgot my name, I didn't clock it as anything. It was during a team meeting. I just finished walking through a process improvement I'd been working on for weeks. I remember feeling proud. My hands were still a little shaky when I finished talking. Kara tilted her head and smiled. "Can you send that file? What's your name again?" It landed oddly, but softly. People chuckled. Not cruelly, just reflexively. I laughed too, because that's what you do. You laugh because correcting someone feels worse than being erased. I said my name. She apologized. Meeting moved on. But something lingered. The second time, it felt different. Same setup, same room. I'd contributed again, this time pushing back gently on an unrealistic timeline. Kara waited until eyes were on me. Then, "Sorry, what was your name again?" Wide eyes, hand on chest. "Oh my God, I'm the worst with names." People smiled sympathetically. I felt heat crawl up my neck. We sat 10 feet apart. We had worked together for over a year. Still, I swallowed it. Then it happened again and again. Always public, always after I spoke, never when it was just the two of us. She started calling me honey, girl, once sweetie. Each time, it shaved something off me. Not enough to notice all at once, just enough to make me smaller by degrees. And the worst part? No one ever jumped in. There's a reason this kind of behavior messes with your head more than outright cruelty, because it doesn't look like cruelty. It looks like friendliness with a minor flaw. It looks like someone who's just quirky. It looks like you being too sensitive. That's how it survives. Every time Kara forgot my name, there was a split second where my brain scrambled to protect her instead of myself. She's probably just stressed. She has a lot on her plate. Don't make this weird. That internal reflex to excuse someone else's disrespect before even acknowledging your own discomfort is something a lot of women are trained into early. Be agreeable, be understanding, be flexible. So I bent. And the more I bent, the more space she took. I started noticing how strategic the timing was. She never forgot my name when she needed something privately. She never forgot it when she wanted to sound supportive one-on-one. It only happened when other people were present, when attention was on me, when I had just contributed something valuable. That pattern matters because it turns your competence into a setup. You speak, you contribute, you step forward, and then, who are you again? It subtly reframes you as interchangeable, as background, as someone whose ideas can float free of their identity. I noticed how meetings started to feel different in my body. My shoulders stayed tense longer. My throat tightened before speaking. I'd rehearse my name in my head like armor. I hated that. I hated that someone else's behavior had rewired how I occupied space. The emails were almost worse because written communication is intentional. When Kara emailed me without my name, it felt like being reduced to a function, not a colleague, not a person, just a task processor. And then I'd see her signature, 4 lines long, full name, job title, certifications, a quote about leadership or growth. It was branding. She was very carefully making sure her identity was never in question, while quietly erasing mine. That's when the anger finally crystallized. Not explosive anger, cold anger. The kind that stops asking why and starts asking how long. I thought about going to HR. Then I imagined the meeting. Well, she's never said anything explicitly offensive. Are you sure it wasn't accidental? Maybe you're interpreting it personally. I realized something uncomfortable. If I escalated this formally, I'd become the problem, and Kara would walk away clean. So instead, I watched. I watched how she behaved around people with power. I watched how her voice softened when leadership spoke. I watched how careful she was with names when it mattered to her. And that's when I understood something important. Kara wasn't careless. She was selective. The arrival of the new director changed the temperature of the office overnight. Suddenly, conversations dropped half an octave when he walked by. People straightened their posture unconsciously. Laptops opened faster. Emails got answered quicker. Power does that. But no one changed more dramatically than Kara. It was like she'd been waiting for this moment. She started arriving earlier, heels clicking sharply down the hallway. Her outfits became more polished, less casual friendly, more future leadership. She practiced phrases out loud at her desk. Not quietly, not subtly, loud enough for people to hear. I really think we need to align cross-functionally. We should focus on scalable impact. She laughed harder at jokes that weren't funny. She nodded enthusiastically during conversations she wasn't part of. She positioned herself physically closer to the director whenever possible. And through all of it, she never forgot his name, or any man's name. That contrast was impossible to ignore once I stopped gaslighting myself. I realized something else, too. Kara wasn't threatened by me. She was threatened by visibility, by the idea that my contributions might carry my name with them. In her mental map of the office, there was only room for one woman to be remembered clearly, and she had chosen herself. That's when I stopped trying to fix it quietly. I stopped pulling her aside, stopped explaining, stopped correcting. Not because I'd given up, but because I was done playing defense. I started documenting patterns mentally. Who she remembered, when she forgot, who laughed, who stayed silent. I noticed how leadership responded when names were used incorrectly, how quickly they corrected themselves, how uncomfortable it made people when the mistake felt intentional. That's when the plan, not a scheme, not revenge in the dramatic sense, started forming. I didn't need to trap her. I just needed to let her keep going, because behavior like that relies on one thing above all else: the assumption that the other person will continue to protect you. I decided I wouldn't anymore. The quarterly review meeting felt heavier than usual. There was a weight in the air, one of anticipation, judgment, and expectation, like the office itself was holding its breath. The glass walls reflected fluorescent lights, making everything feel sharper, colder, more exposed. Every reflection seemed to double the room, like echoes of everyone's ambition bouncing back at them. The long table stretched like a runway from one end of the room to the other. Leadership sat far away at the head of the table, faces sharp, expressions calibrated for assessment. Their eyes, trained to measure performance, flicked from laptop screens to notes to people, cataloging everything with quiet efficiency. Kara was buzzing. She leaned forward, tapping her pen against her notebook, laughter spilling out at the wrong times, talking too fast. Her energy was performance energy, the kind that screamed confidence while quietly begging for approval. Every phrase was polished, rehearsed, designed to show engagement, intelligence, presence. The kind of energy that fills the room until you can almost feel your own pulse trying to match it. I sat quietly, hands folded over my notes, mind rehearsing the words I'd chosen. Not the polished spin and not the practiced inflection, just facts, metrics, progress, and risks. My eyes drifted over the documents I'd prepared, the spreadsheets I'd dissected. I noticed subtle things around the room: the slight twitch of someone's hand, the barely perceptible narrowing of an eyebrow, the tapping of a foot under the table. These small details felt larger here, magnified by the stakes of the meeting. When my turn came, I stood. I straightened my back, rolled my shoulders, and delivered my update clearly. Metrics first, numbers presented without flair or hesitation. Progress next, steps taken, achievements reached, hurdles overcome. Risks last, honest, transparent, unemotional. I didn't need to embellish. I didn't need to soften. The room didn't need another performance. They needed clarity. The director leaned forward slightly, the faintest sign of interest in his eyes. He asked a follow-up question, a technical one, something that required not just knowledge, but thoughtfulness. I answered without hesitation, walking him through the rationale, the data, the projections. No pause, no filler words, just calm, precise articulation. The room's hum dimmed slightly as everyone tuned into the exchange. And then Kara moved. She waited just long enough for the attention to settle after my answer. The timing was deliberate, rehearsed even. Then sweet, bright, practiced. Great point. What's your name again? Time slowed. The words hung in the air like a dropped glass, vibrating just enough to make everyone notice. My pulse hit my throat, a sudden spike of heat and recognition. The room felt smaller somehow, the glass walls pressing in, the fluorescent lights glaring a little brighter. But underneath it, there was something unexpected. Calm. Not the calm of suppression or avoidance, but the calm of decision, of understanding that this was a moment not to flinch, but to respond. I didn't rush. I didn't apologize. I didn't soften it. I met her eyes. Smiling, not cruelly, not mockingly, just evenly, I said, "It's the same name as the last 20 times, Kara. I'm surprised you can remember every man's name in this room, but not mine." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It wasn't the kind of silence that demands reconciliation or apology. It was diagnostic. People weren't wondering if something was wrong. They were realizing what it was. There was an invisible pulse of understanding, a quiet recalibration of how this room worked, how people behaved, how power and attention were distributed. Kara froze. Her smile cracked like a mask falling from her face. For a moment, I saw the flash of awareness, of recognition, of disbelief. The room's temperature shifted. Cool, clinical, observant. No one leaned forward, no one laughed, no one spoke. They watched. The director looked at her, not angry, not amused, just assessing. His expression was unreadable, the kind of quiet authority that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. Then he said, "Yeah, that's not a great look." The simplicity of it was shocking. No lecture, no scolding, just truth. From someone whose opinion mattered, from someone who could see past the performance and the rehearsed charm and evaluate what actually existed in the room. Kara stumbled through an explanation. Stress, overwhelm, brain fog. Each excuse sounded thinner than the last, a shadow against the clarity of the moment. No one leaned in, no one offered forgiveness or counsel. The moment had already landed. Everyone understood it, even if unspoken. I turned back to the director and continued my report. Metrics, progress, next steps, risks, mitigations, projections. The words flowed again, uninterrupted, but there was a new weight to them now, a recognition that they mattered more than performance or pretense. My work mattered more than her discomfort. Internally, I felt the surge of something I hadn't expected, liberation. The strange, quiet satisfaction of finally standing fully present in a room where my presence had been ignored. I felt the distinction between visibility and recognition, the difference between being seen superficially and being acknowledged meaningfully. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of charts, updates, and crosstalk. Kara kept her eyes mostly down, occasionally glancing at me, a flicker of something unspoken passing in her gaze. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The moment was complete, crystallized, unalterable. When the meeting finally ended, people drifted out, conversations starting anew outside the glass walls. The noise returned slowly, like the tide reclaiming sand, but I carried the calm with me. Not arrogance, not triumph, not satisfaction derived from someone else's falter, just a grounded understanding that I had claimed my space, that I had answered for myself in a room that often demanded you shrink. I walked back to my desk, quiet, methodical, noticing the subtle shift in the air. Colleagues glanced at me differently, not in judgment, not in disdain, but with a flicker of acknowledgement, recognition. Even the director's small nod in passing carried weight. And I realized something critical. This wasn't just about Kara forgetting my name. It wasn't even really about her. It was about the accumulation of moments like this, the microaggressions, the erasures, the subtle signals that told me to shrink, to soften, to disappear. And it was about deciding, finally, that I wouldn't. It was about understanding the difference between tolerance and acceptance, between patience and passivity, between enduring discomfort and commanding respect. The final lesson was simple, hard, liberating. Your work is your anchor. Your presence is your power. And the moment you claim it, without bitterness, without spectacle, everyone around you recalibrates, whether they like it or not. And in that room, under the fluorescent lights, framed by glass walls and the gaze of leadership, I had claimed it. Kara would remember my name next time, maybe differently, maybe grudgingly, but she would remember, and more importantly, I had remembered myself. The meeting ended, but the calm didn't leave me. It lingered, subtle, steady, the quiet gravity of someone who had finally learned how to stand without wavering, even when the world tried to make them invisible. Silence. Kara froze. The director looked at her. Flat. Yeah, that's not a great look. She stammered, apologized, blamed stress. It didn't matter. The moment had landed. I turned back to the director, kept going, because my work mattered more than her performance. After the meeting, Kara hissed that I embarrassed her. I said quietly, "Good, now stop." She never forgot my name again. And honestly, the silence between us is peace. If this story hits something deep in you, if you've ever been erased quietly, politely, professionally, hit like, subscribe, and comment below. What's the calmest revenge you've ever seen or wished you'd taken? And don't forget to subscribe to Taking Revenge Hour for more stories where justice doesn't scream. It whispers and hits harder.